Okay, y'all, this one's a little bit confusing for me, but something I have discovered as I was pulling apart my fuel injectors for a 7.3 AD series injectors. I've watched a whole bunch of videos on shimming these injectors for rebuilds and whatnot, and found something that no one else has mentioned. Even Clint Allen at the Custom Works channel mentioned kind of polishing down the shims on the bottom side of the top plate of the poppet valve. But I noticed every one of these little armature plates that go on the top of the poppet valve has a small indentation or imprint, if you would, of the top of the poppet valve. And I don't know if that's normal or not. On this one here, you see this little dot, and you see the circle where this is on the top there. I don't know anything about injectors. This is my first time even tearing down a set. But I noticed that little indentation, that kind of almost weird hourglass shape that is identical to the top of a poppet valve. And the fact that you're supposed to measure underneath this armature plate with a feeler gauge to measure your injectors, I got to thinking, that little indentation there isn't very much, but there isn't a lot of clearance underneath this plate. And I've done a few more, but what I have here is a 1500 grit hone plate. And I'm going to do this in a couple of stages and show you how the bottom of this plate isn't flat at all. If it's anything like the rest of them, they've all been irregular. They've all not been flat, and they have all been very random in the pattern that you get when you start to buff these a little bit. The reveal, or whatever you want to call it, you'll see as I start this. What I try to do is turn it about a quarter turning after a few circles here, and I alternate which way that I buff these things down. Now, as you can see, this one is starting to give us a little bit of an X pattern, which about half of them have given me an X pattern, and about half of them have just given me a couple of shadows that were diagonal from one side of each other. But I'm going to continue, and I'll show you it doesn't take very long. This video is not going to be cut or edited in any way. Like I said, I usually try to turn it about a quarter of a turn. And I'm not pressing down super hard. You see, holding my hone with the thumb and just working it with my finger. And the more I do it, you'll see the smaller that little dark X becomes. You can still see that little imprint from the top of the poppet valve. And as you can see, this armature plate's getting real shiny. But I'm going to keep going. I'm going to show you. I'm going to keep doing this until that imprint of the poppet valve is completely gone, which should mean that the bottom of our armature plate is completely and nearly perfectly flat by the time that we no longer have an imprint from the poppet valve. And removing material in this way should increase our clearance between the armature plate and our injector top plate. Of all the videos that I have seen on the internet, there is not a single mention of this one. And maybe there's a video out there. But if that video does exist, I certainly have not myself found that video. As you can see, most of that darker gray coloring is gone. We still have very, very prominent and clear impression from our poppet valve. Now you can see that there's very, very little gray left, except for exactly where the poppet valve indention is. I just rotate it ever so often just to try to help make sure that it's staying flat. Of course, I'm making a circle pattern, but just trying to keep it all nice and random so it's being done evenly. Still just a little bit of gray outside the center, but now you can see that some of the gray from the indent of the poppet valve it's starting to fade away now. I'm not a very good YouTube guy, just holding the phone in one hand while I'm working in the other. And yes, I'm sitting in the recliner as I do this. I think it's safe to say now all of that dark gray on the outside of the little poppet valve indention is gone, and we're starting to get a pretty good chunk of that center indention gone as well. This is a knife hone set that I bought from Harbor. Oh no, definitely wasn't Harbor Freight. Sorry, that was Amazon. Spent about $25 on this hone set, and I believe she starts at around $320 to $350, goes all the way to $3,000, and used it on one of my knives earlier, and I've basically just been using this 1500 on these armatures, and thoroughly happy with that. Just type in 1500 grit hone, and as I believe this is 7 plates came with this kit, from 3,000, 2,000, 1,500, 1,000, and a few others. Even come with a nice little strip of leather to strap your blades with, and a little small plastic angle guide, but that's something that I don't need This one is actually, I'm going to say, typical, the last one being the biggest pain. This one is just, I don't know if it's something to do with me trying to do it one-handed, which I pretty much did them all one-handed earlier. I would be holding my left hand just to keep the hones from moving around earlier, but other than that, it's about the only difference. None of the other ones took near as much work as this one's taken for me. I could be really screwing up too, folks. I mean, honestly, I don't know. But it's definitely something that I haven't seen discussed in any other video about shimming or rebuilding Huey injectors for 7.3 power stroke. When you shim this armature plate to increase your clearance between this armature plate and the top of the injector, I mean, it's really doing the same thing by making sure that this is polished down and smooth and flat. Because once you get rid of that indentation and make this smooth and flat all the way across the top, it's going to increase your clearance around the outside edge. This is a little side project, so it's probably going to take a little while before I get a second video. Or if you know something about this, maybe this is an industry secret. Maybe this is why you can read in the forums about how there's no such thing as do-it-yourself injector fixes and do-it-yourself injector rebuilds, and there's many forums where there are telling you that, or telling people that doing the injector rebuild themselves isn't going to work, and they'll find out soon enough. Who knows? Like I said, I'm not an industry guy. I'm not a diesel mechanic. This is just something I wanted to try to do myself. I've been doing most of my own mechanic work my whole life. Taught from my dad. It's a great way to save money. Now, as you can see, and I'm trying to work every angle here, there is almost zero marking from the top of the poppet valve. There is just a little tiny noticeable mark there, and I just can't get it to really focus in. So I'm going to give it a little bit more. I'm going to go ahead and take that out. I got all the rest of them to where the marking's not noticeable. This one, the last one, as they always say, as the usually the last one is the biggest itch. The biggest, most painful, aggravating one there is usually is going to be the last one. But it's just one of those things. While I was inspecting all the pieces, it just kind of common sense really just dawned on me that it just seems like it would be logical, commonsensical, whatever you want to call it, that if there was an indention around the center made from the top of the poppet valve, then resurfacing the bottom side of this armature plate would be no real difference than resurfacing a cylinder head. You get it nice and smooth, and there's no such thing as anything perfect in this world, but you get it nice and smooth and perfectly flat. If it wasn't before, it's going to increase your clearance. And now, as you can see, there is a little dot there. There's a couple of little dots, but this is some kind of marking. I don't know what that is. Some of them have, I'll turn it to the top. That big round mark there is some sort of factory marking. I don't know what that's for. Maybe if I did, I would know that what I'm doing is pointless. Who knows? Some of them have a round mark, and then some of them have a straight mark. But clearly you can see there's no more indentation. No more indentation. Sorry about the reflection from the light fixture there. But no more indentation at all from the top of the poppet valve. So this armature should be nice and smooth and level and even from the bottom. So, somebody that has access to a surface grinder would be able to do much better than this, but we use what we have, or we order something that's within budget. But this is what you get after a few minutes of polishing this out. We're in, maybe 20 minutes. But if that's what it takes, I definitely think that going into a project like this, spending an extra 20 minutes on each injector is going to end up being, you can actually see the reflection of my finger there, but extra 20 minutes per injector, and, clearance maybe without having to use the shim kit. Definitely worth the effort and the quote-unquote work. To polish these out. I'll eventually get around to it, and I'll post an update. Good luck, and God bless to all of you.